Talking to many fellow cruisers, I spotted 7 mistakes that I was, and most of you are likely to be making on cruise disembarkation day, making the end of our cruises worse than they absolutely should be. I'm Gary Bembridge, and I think I figured out what smart cruisers all do to make cruise disembarkation easier and much more fun. It's working for me, so let's see if it can work for you too. When planning a cruise, like most cruises, I used to focus on the cruise itself and pay little attention to the detail of disembarkation day, like the time of my flight home. Smart cruisers taught me to factor it into my planning with as much care as the cruise itself. So now, for example, if I want to get home as quickly as possible on disembarkation day, I book a flight as close to noon as possible. No earlier, no later. That gives me the greatest chance of making it without stress and also reduces hanging about at airports. Ships usually dock between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. and I need to factor in the ship getting cleared, getting off the ship and to the airport. Cruise lines, however, often recommend or offer flights after 2 p.m. However, smart travelers know that many airlines only open their check-in desks at the airport 2 hours before a flight. So a late afternoon or early evening flight means sitting at the airport for many hours, hanging around until check-in opens. I experienced that firsthand after sitting for 4.5 hours in Athens airport for a 3 p.m. flight after a seaborne Greek island cruise. There was one small cafe, a McDonald's, and not great Wi-Fi to keep me occupied. This made me change things. Now, of course, that mistake also, by the way, taught me something else that smart cruisers do when flights are only available later. Use disembarkation day to explore rather than sit at the airport. Now, to solve the problem of what to do with my luggage while I explore, I first see if the cruise line offers an airport transfer with City Tour first, as the luggage then travels with us on the bus. For example, I got a Holland America cruise in Barcelona last year and I did exactly this. But these transfers do tend to end by early afternoon. So there's another thing that I often look at. So I look for luggage storage options. For example, I could store luggage in Vancouver Cruise Port. When I came off my Alaska trip in Miami, I found places in South Beach, although I usually get an Uber or a taxi to the airport and I leave my luggage in the inexpensive storage there and I use the fast trains in and out of Miami that cost just a couple of dollars to go exploring. Whatever plans for disembarkation day they settle on, I found that smart cruisers also have a luggage strategy. They taught me to plan for self-disembarkation, even if I'm not planning to do it. Self-disembarkation is where cruise lines let passengers leave the ship as soon as it is cleared or at any time that you choose, and all you have to do is carry your own bags unaided. I invested, by the way, in an away suitcase. They're really easy to maneuver and wheel about, and I know I can take it myself along corridors. I can even carry it down the stairs if needed. So I now always only take luggage that I can manage to maneuver around myself. Getting off the ship can be a crush, or it can mean lots of waiting around for your turn. So I now almost always do self-disembarkation. It has transformed getting off the ship and freeing up the day. Surprisingly, few people choose this option. And so I'm always able to fly through any checks like immigration without any lines, like I recently did disembarking on Cunard Queen Mary 2 in New York. There were no lines for immigration. There were no lines for taxi. It really does transform and smooth getting off the ship. It also means that I am in more control of what time I get off the ship, as that can be any time from when the ship is cleared to final disembarkation time. You can choose any time if you're self-disembarking. So that's what I've seen smart cruisers do. Even before they join the cruise, they have that luggage strategy. But what about once on the cruise? What do they do when they're on the cruise? Like most of you, I'm sure, I used to get pretty irritated that lines started sending stuff about disembarkation day early on in the cruise. But smart cruisers taught me that they do that for a really good reason. It's to flush out issues. And I learned that by taking time to read and digest these as soon as they arrive is actually really important. It's helped highlight many errors and caught many issues many times. The worst, for example, was when I noticed on a P&O Britannia Caribbean cruise that they had me as an independent traveler and they were asking if I wanted to book a transfer, and they were asking for my flight times. Now I thought that was kind of a little bit odd because I had a package booked with their charter flights back to the UK from Barbados and it was all paid for. Having checked that, I raised it and found the line actually had no return flight booked for me at all. This early check early on the cruise meant they had time to resolve it. By the way, that flight was actually full and they actually booked me an upgraded flight on a scheduled airline, so it was a bit of a win in the end. Also, by the way, some cruise lines require at this stage to register for self-disembarkation, and some can cap numbers, not many, but it's worth checking and registering early on. I always check the planned arrival time and disembarkation start time in here too. It can be different and is often different to what the original itinerary says. And then if it has any implications on my plan, I have plenty of time to get that sorted. That's where having the self-disembarkation capability has saved the day a couple of times. I found, for example, on an MSC cruise that we would be docking almost an hour and a half later than the original itinerary. So I could easily then do self-disembarkation, get off quicker, and still was able to catch my scheduled flight on time. A day or so before the end of the cruise, the final disembarkation details arrive. There are a few things in there that I always check carefully that smart cruisers have taught me. First, the disembarkation time finally allocated to me if I'm not doing self-disembarkation. By the way, I've found that if the time that I've been allocated doesn't really work, going and nicely asking guest services to change it usually works. I've never been refused a change of time earlier or later. If not doing self-disembarkation, I also check what time the packed suitcase must be outside the cabin. And then I work out how I'm going to fit that around whatever evening plans I've got next. Really importantly, look at the dining options listed for disembarkation day. Most lines will not allow room service on disembarkation day. I can then again plan my disembarkation morning and plans knowing what dining time is, what time I'm leaving the ship, and get that all sorted ahead of time. I also then check what time I must be out of the cabin. On most cruise lines, it's by as early as 8 a.m. Again, you can factor that into your plans. One absolutely key thing to review is anything required by the ports or the countries. It's got much more complicated post-COVID shutdown with more documentation, proof of vaccines or questionnaires, apps like Canada's Arrive Can to be done or whatever. Now, although this is easing and things are changing, it's still smart to double check if there's anything in there that says that you need to have ready. I discovered it the hard way by not checking. Many years ago, I got a reminder that I had to have an ESTA as a UK passenger to enter the US. And I was, yeah, I've got that. But what I didn't double check was that my ESTA had actually expired. And so when I got to immigration, I hit a big issue because I had no ESTA. It got resolved after much delay, being hauled into a side room, almost making me late for my flight. And now, in fact, there's a pretty hefty fine associated with that. There are several packing mistakes that the cruise lines see repeatedly on every cruise. And here's some smart cruiser tricks that I've picked up to avoid those. If you're putting your suitcase out the night before, absolutely make sure that you have, in fact, left suitable clothes for leaving the ship. I have seen several times passengers embarrassed scurrying off the ship in a cruise line dressing gown because they forgot to leave some or all of their clothes out. Or often they're in slippers because they forgot to leave shoes. Also, the smart thing to do is triple check every single space when packing. Cabins have many storage places, and if you're anything like me, you've popped things in different drawers or storage units over the cruise. I must admit, before I did this, I've left behind camera SD cards, I left behind a St. Christopher, which I value very highly, I left behind chargers, and so on. On my last cruise, because people hadn't done that, when I arrived in the cabin, I found drawers with items jammed in them that previous guests had forgotten. And in fact, rather embarrassedly, the cabin steward had not picked that up and removed them. Pack all your valuables and all your medication in your hand baggage, not in the bags that you put out to be collected and taken off the ship for you. The other thing to make sure you do is clear the safe before leaving. You could leave yourself a note, for example, but what many smart cruisers suggest, although some people have told me they think it's not very hygienic or very appropriate, but actually putting one of your shoes in the safe or something that you're going to absolutely need in the morning to remind you to empty it when you're getting dressed in the morning. The shoe thing actually works pretty well. Also, if you're putting your luggage out, keep one of the tear tags off the luggage label. That will both remind you what slot you've been allocated, and also some cruise lines will require you to show your luggage tag color to let you off the ship at your allocated time, to basically stop everyone rushing off when they want to. Finally, when packing, don't pack cruise line umbrella, dressing gown, binoculars, or any other bits and pieces around the cabin. You will be charged for those, and often at a higher amount than if you had simply requested to buy one during the cruise. A very, very smart thing before disembarking is to check your statement really, really carefully. Although increasingly fewer lines are doing it, a statement is usually left overnight for you to check. Although on my recent Holland America and Princess cruises, the only option I had was to check it on the app or on the television. It's absolutely essential to check that everything is right, because once you're off the ship, you'll find it impossible to correct or change any errors on your statement. I did, for example, find on my last Princess cruise a whole bunch of drinks charges on the last night that weren't mine, and I was able to go and get those removed before leaving the ship. If I hadn't done that, I really wouldn't have been able to get that sorted. Especially check final night charges is a tip from smart cruisers who've been burnt on that. Another really smart thing to do is not throw money away. So during the cruise, I like to check what is refundable and non-refundable onboard credits. Now, if I have refundable onboard credit, there's no need for me to spend it at all because it will be refunded to my credit card at the end of the cruise. But if I have non-refundable onboard credit, I make sure I've used all of that up before the last night, so I'm not wasting it. There are a few smart things I learned about getting off the ship on disembarkation day that people do fall over and make mistakes around. If the elevators are busy and full of other guests leaving, which they often are, I go to a different elevator area. Now, disembarkation is often midship, so if I go to the elevators that are forwards or aft, I normally find they're surprisingly quiet and definitely not as busy, so easier to get down to disembarkation level. And if it is actually really, really busy and taking too much time, I actually get in and go up with the elevator to then come back down. Make sure, of course, you've got your cruise card, or if you're on Princess, your medallion, because you absolutely need that to get off. It's not like in a hotel where you can just kind of leave your keys in your room. Make sure you've got your passport and that luggage tag color that you've needed. I have been on many trips where people have got a transfer, they've got to the airport and realize their passport is still back on the ship. If you found this helpful, why not find out the smart things to do on embarkation day in this video here, where I start by talking about the single biggest mistake and blunder that people make on embarkation day. See you over there.